Welcome to Carter's Country Club. This is episode 2, Bikes, Buoys, and Ballet, part 7. And my question is, are you raising a boy? And I want to play Miner's Refrain. I want to play a little more Gillian Walsh for you. And yeah, so let's just take a deep breath.
In the black dust towns of East Tennessee, all the work's about the same. And you may not go to a job in the ground, but you'll learn a miner's refrain. I'm down in a hole, I'm down in a hole, down in a deep dark hole. I'm down in a hole, I'm down in a hole, down in a deep dark hole.
Ah, I did a pretty good job with that transition that time. It's getting a little better. If you've never heard that, you should, right? You should. And if you don't know anything about miners and mining and children in mines, you should, right? Deeper concepts for another time. I want to get back to talking about movement and swim and all of the things related to health in the body in as much as I can get to in this small amount of time as I ramble on. So, one of the things that I tell my young athletes, and one of the things that I share with Carter, and I really encourage families to consider, is it's my understanding that between the ages of 9 and 13, those could vary depending on what you're looking at, we are growing lung tissue and lung capacity for the rest of our lives, right? So, in my mind, I'm remembering T.S. Wiley also talks about like maybe it's T.S. Wiley. I feel like it's T.S. Wiley talks about like a set point that your body hits when you're going through puberty. Maybe that's another author, but in my mind, I was hearing that at the same time that maybe you need that bit of information. So, what I think about is that the lung capacity that I have, and I've shared this before if you followed me for a long time, or if you know me in person, that I believe like my lung capacity that allowed me to do what I have done in training, in CrossFit workouts, in high intensity exercise is because of my competitive swimming between the ages of 9 and 13 in that window, right? Which is also why I really love age group swimmers and why I encourage Carter to keep swimming, even though it's not his passion, even if he just does 2 days a week, to grow that lung capacity. And it's also why I put him in 100-meter races at a very young age because I was more interested in that endurance capacity and that lung capacity than him sprinting and beating other kids at 25 yards or 25 meters. That still bothers me. It bothers me in my own summer league that in our summer league, hold on, I have to take a drink. The 10 and unders only compete in 25 yards or meters, which I sort of understand that, it's hard to get all of that in. And if you have new swimmers, they're going to be very slow at 50 yards or 50 meters. But I just am so passionate about this growing of your lung tissue, right? So in Carter's Country Club, when we have our facility, We'll see. And I'm open, right? I'm like such a low level coach. But that's my understanding. And I really like endurance in younger athletes. Again, once they're prepared, once they have their technique. And let's get back to technique and talking about natural gifts, right? The things that we're innately born with, or is Carter externally rotated because I am externally rotated? Is that because he's my child, or is that the pattern that I learned by watching his movement? My mother is externally rotated. My cousin Stephen is externally rotated. My mom says the light freeds, her mother's side, were turned out, right? I don't know, right? If we're thinking of Balanchine and ballet and Russian ballet, it's my understanding that Balanchine could lay a child on the floor in what in yoga would be Supta Baddha Konasana, but laying on your back in that, what in gymnastics we call a butterfly stretch, turned out and assess whether they were going to be a dancer or not. And there's different schools of training that approach turnout from different ways. I have been really influenced by modern, and I knew I was very externally rotated. So my experience in modern dance and my experience in Pilates and in yoga had me really focus on being parallel. So, yeah, external rotation, parallel, all the things. I am not very internally rotated. And my stepdad told me that athletes that are very internally rotated are very fast. If they have small ankles, high calves, internally rotated. Again, nature or nurture, how young did they start training? But if they have those type of legs, then they would be a faster sprinter. I'm not that fast. Carter's not that fast. We're very externally rotated. Did he walk like me because he's mine or because he watched me or a little bit of both? We'll see. Let's talk about breaststroke. Okay. So you can hear Justin and I cheering Carter in the background. There's Carter's 6-year-old breaststroke. The boy next to him is older than him because six and unders, again, rarely compete in 50 yards or 50 meters. And you saw Carter do the turn there. So he would go on to beat that boy that's definitely older and bigger than him who doesn't have the technique in the lane next to him. Again, and I want to keep asking this question, does Carter have that technique only because he's more externally rotated because of his genetics? Or nurture? I'm going to say nurture. I'm going to say the environment. Maybe his pelvic structure and where his femur bone sits in the head of the acetabulum perhaps is from his genetics, but it also could be, again, he's learning from me. Let's watch him beat another older kid in breaststroke. Again, with like no training. He doesn't want to swim. He just does because he has access to it. He's gliding a little bit more there, but not really. But he's going to out touch this boy because of his head position, because of his experience, and because of his acceleration in his kick. Look at him. He just gets out of the pool. Now he knows and he works really hard to go over and give high fives. We're really fortunate to have a master's coach and a master's swimmer that has worked with our athletes to really teach them etiquette, which is super cool. But also, that boy on the other team, he was at our previous club, and Carter had a conversation with him because he also is classically educated and is a homeschool kid. And so I know that breaststroke is probably not his best stroke. And I think that Carter's had more access to water than that young man. But again, I don't know him that well. I'm just kind of assuming. Let's talk about why, again, that Carter has been, quote, forced to swim, right? He's not really forced to swim, he's given choices. And we all get choices. So he was forced, if you want to say that, not really. He was persuaded, perhaps, or encouraged to swim because this is how Carter spent his days as a toddler. He's past toddler age then. This is actually, he's probably about 3.5 there. So this is in COVID. Look at him do his little dance. Look at him. Oh, going to just move around. See, there's the dancer in him, right? There's the mover, and there's the just grooving and being on the sand. That's where he wants to be. And these are, again, if you don't know, these are from the Red River Gorge. This is from Jump Rock. And I know that bog boots are not ideal for movement. And so I've really worked to put Carter in other shoes. But as far as cold temperatures and water and forest school, my mom has continues to purchase in bog boots because she's right. They do outperform, and the size of them outperforms the more barefoot counterparts. Let's listen to him a little bit talking.
Yeah, I had water on my boot. You know why
But
there's
they
also
work.
water on my boot?
Why?
Because I wore in the cleat this morning. I can run on it.
He can run on that. He looks terrible running in those boots. Those boots do not work well, and he will argue with me to this day that he can do all the same things in regular shoes. But I have done my best to keep him barefoot and keep him in minimal shoes, and we love Vivo Barefoot. Uh, but the price point, means that we don't always live in Vivo Barefoot. When kiddos' shoes are $100, and sometimes Carter stays in a size for a long time. We called him his fire boots. He had some really awesome bright orange Vivo Barefoot boots, and those lasted a long time because like he didn't grow. But then every once in a while, we'll buy an awesome pair of shoes, and they last for not even a whole season. So we do our best. He also loves to wear cowboy boots, and I educate him about his feet. And sometimes, again, I give him choices, but sometimes I'm pretty firm. I'm like, you got to take those off and put on some Converse or some Vans. You gotta, or free your toes. But again, this is why I knew that Carter needed to be a strong swimmer on top of the heart and lungs, right? And I've talked about this before. He loves the good sand. That's where he wants to be. And see, he was still wearing that terrible puddle jumper then, which you can see it restricts his arm movement. But when you know better, you do better. Okay. And now I would never put a kiddo in a puddle jumper. I would totally use a Swimways power swimmer or a flotation pack on the back or, a variety of different things. So, yeah, if you need to know what a Swimways power swimmer is, you can totally leave a comment here. I call them pup packs. So if you ever hear me say a pup pack because of like the Paw Patrol pup packs, we've talked about the Paw Patrol. We'll talk about them a little bit more. Those order following dogs. Order followers. Okay, let's keep moving because I want to talk a little bit more about choice. And I've shared this before, but again, let's remember. It's not about privilege, it's about choices. We made different choices than other parents. I chose to take Carter to ballet at 18 months, so he was prepared to be Fritz with the National Ballet in 2024. He learned to walk on rough trails while we rock climbed, so he was prepared to to run off the couch and get fourth place the other day, right? Side note, I may have mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it again. My friend Chadwick Weigel, who is a boxing coach, he coached the U.S. team at the Paris Olympics, and he and Carter were having a conversation, which did not go great because it was over Zoom the other day, and Carter does not like to communicate in that way. But Chad was, asking Carter if he was okay with getting fourth place, like because he doesn't want to train. And Carter was kind of like, yeah, I don't care. So again, these are not things that he's necessarily, he's not motivated really by the winning because he doesn't care about those things. But he did talk about this morning on his way to the play as we were listening to the Ballet Help Desk podcast. He was like, yeah, I'm like, you know, I'm like, Brett's son. I like the corrections. I want to learn and I want to get better. Right. So again, is he technical because he's mine? Is he technical in his brain because of how I've raised him? Okay, so back to what I was saying here. I put him in 100-meter races at age 5, so he would be prepared to beat a 14-year-old in a 100 breast last fall, right? So you saw the video of him beating a 10-year-old, but yes, last fall he swam 100 breast, no training, and beat a 14-year-old. Again, he would not beat a high-level 14-year-old. That kid had to be new to swimming and probably was not a gifted breaststroker. But Carter's technique can get him so far. But now he's at a place, and this is what Chad was also talking to him about at 8 years old, he gets to choose, is he going to train? And so right now, we had the last couple of weeks to have a conversation about if Carter was going to accept a full scholarship to the Nashville Ballet. Was he ready to go there 2 days a week and train? And he sat with it and sat with it. And he finally came to yes. He's still hesitant because he wants to be outside playing with his friends, but he doesn't, he told Chad, that's what he said. He said, I'm not going to quit. I just never want to quit. And again, is that in him or because he listened to me do Mark Passio's training and that's one of the tenets of the course? I don't know. I think it's a little bit of both. I think he's got that fiery Aries rising. Um, and I think he wants to be his best. He's just figuring out what that area of movement expression is going to be for him. So, I'm choosing now to create Carter's Country Club because I know all children need access to the arts and athletics that teach right from wrong. The arts are failing to be moral. All governing bodies are immoral, and so are our religious institutions, or our world would be free. Instead, most of our world is suffering, and our children are suffering the most. 100%. 100%. I shared it in the past. I'm going to keep sharing it again. So that is my intention. And I know there are exceptions. I know there are people within arts organizations that are moral. But I don't believe there are truly people in governing bodies that believe in that type of authority that can be moral. And religious institutions also have that type of authority, right? And the blind faith that doesn't leave us to really stand for right and wrong outside of religion or a particular belief system. So, again, back to swimming. This is Carter and his best friend Ari doggy paddling. Ari just did a little bounce off the bottom of the pool, I think, a little bit there. Ari's putting his face in at least. He had had swimming lessons. Carter, of course, would not listen and did not have swimming lessons. The lifeguard goes in after them. I've shared this, right? So, again, expect to self rescue. No one is coming. It is up to us. And if we think that we can exist inside these institutions, right? Just like, for example, it's not just that I don't have any USA athletes and Carter's not competing in USA swimming. It's that I know what, not necessarily, we can think about USA gymnastics or we can think about what's going on in USA climbing. USA climbing tests athletes' testosterone to decide how they are going to identify, which tells me that they're allowing their athletes to take I guess bioidentical hormones. I don't know enough about all that, but it sounds like that's what they're allowing them to do. So it sounds like these governing bodies are not serving us, which I think is the same in the arts. But we're going to keep talking about swimming. Here is Carter doing a flip. And then he's put his face in, but he's barely, paddling back to the wall, right? So this is, in my opinion, you know, normal swimming and development for a 4 year old, right? Again, he had access to water. There are 4 year olds that swim far better than that have more skill. But at this point, Carter was really resistant to taking class or listening to me. I think he had maybe just started his Swim America group program, and so he would have been in like Swim America maybe, two. He was definitely not in three, right? Because you can see his kick is really not propelling him forward. And you can see all of his toys on the side of the pool, right? So he's got a kickboard, he's got fins, he's got some paddles there, he's got some dive toys, and then he's got to learn to swim barbell. So I'm all about all the props, just like I used to be in yoga, just like I used to be in Pilates. I think that's the Pilates person in me, is and the Pilates brain is using the props to do what you couldn't do on your own. Again, if you don't know about Joseph Pilates, you should. And if you think that his equipment and apparatus is meant to make things harder, you have a very limiting belief. That apparatus supports you. Yes, could it challenge you and add external load? It can. But much of my understanding of classical Pilates is that apparatus supports you because mat Pilates is really hard. So Carter is being supported here by a kickboard, fins. The paddles were really more for play, right? It's not like he was training his shoulders at age 4. Although it is my understanding that somewhere between age 3 and 4, the child can get their arms out of the water. And you can see there, Carter was not really getting his arms out of the water. But I don't think that paddles would be the answer for that, right? He's also wasn't rolling his body, right? It's a lot of things, but he's 4 again. Okay, but the flip is really what I love to get children to do because, again, back to my limited understanding of swim angelfish, flips are really good for kids that are challenged by focus and that sensory seek under the water. I also find that kids are excited to do it, and it gets some kids to um, breathe, not necessarily breath retention, right? Because I'm not necessarily looking for him to hold his breath. I want him to exhale through his nose as he flips over, and I want him to have a full exhalation to do so. Again, that's kind of my combination of gymnastics and swimming. And so I'm really excited this summer. I actually just was emailing with one of my board members because I'm offering dry land in the gymnastics room again this season. I didn't do that last summer because I was separating my gymnastics kids. I wanted to make sure I was focusing on them, but instead this year I just invited the gymnasts to swim on the swim team so they can do both. Because I know it's going to grow their heart and lungs. It's all the things. I love swim and gymnastics together. But anyway, so let's talk about jumping and gymnastics and diving blocks. They're not called diving blocks. That's what some people call them. Sometimes they call them a diving board. Just like people call that kickboard, they'll call it a paddle board. It's not a paddle board, it's a kickboard. It's not for paddling, it's for kicking. And these are not diving blocks, they're starting blocks. I referenced the starting block earlier because I referenced that for the most part, 6 and under and sometimes 8 and under swimmers only compete in 25 yards or meters. So the pads, the touch pads, or the timers would be on this side of the pool where the block is. So let's watch Carter jump off the block. It's a pretty good cannonball there. Pretty good cannonball. Oh, doggy paddles back to the pool, right? Back to the side. Not safe. You can see this is a perfect teaching moment, okay? I'm gonna stop it after this. Oh, I might get to Carter's little grumpy next video. But anyway, so yeah, so I want to talk about why kids need to learn to put their head in and reach with 2 hands to the wall. Can you see right here how Carter is doggy paddling and he's not reaching the wall? And see how far away he is? Versus if he were to extend his arms out, right, which is sometimes called that Superman position. If he puts both arms out and he puts his head down, bam, he's at the wall. Now, that will also make him beat the athlete next to him. But in my opinion, it does two things, right? It's going to get you to the wall faster and it makes a good habit in your body for later so that you can beat the athlete next to you. Um, but the doggy paddling, that's why it's not a safety skill. It's why it's not a rescue skill. His head is up, he's far away from the wall, his legs are underneath of him. But the cannonball was great. Uh, so he jumps with 2 feet, which again I've mentioned before. I think used to be like an 18-month milestone. I don't know because I'm not a physical therapist. But now I ask a PT, early childhood educator, physical ed coach, not the one that Carter takes class with, but somebody who was working with some preschoolers last year. I asked her when that milestone was, and she couldn't answer my question. So she said, "Do you think it's changed?" So I don't know. I work with kids to jump with 2 feet so that they don't step off the starting block or the side of the pool and hit their head. So jumping with 2 feet, like a broad jump, is how we learn that. And then I love tucks because kids love cannonballs as long as it's, deep enough. If it's not deep enough, then I teach a compact entry, just like a lifeguard would do. So you flex your feet. If it's deep enough, we point our toes. And we always start with our arms up because if they ever wanted to do a front tuck, they would need to have their arms overhead to tuck and pull in. So again, things that are fun, and we get to incorporate some gymnastics with some swimming. And also, we're just learning to go off the starting blocks. And I think I said this before. I don't know if I said it in episode 1 or if it was the millionth time that I've tried to record episode 2. But Carter learned to go off these blocks specifically at this pool by a master's swimmer who was an All American, used to be top 10 in the world, who has ALS. And so beautiful. I got to see him, and he saw Carter from the side, and got to see my little niece the last time we went over to this club. But yeah, he taught Carter how to go off the blocks doing a grab start, which again is both feet together. It's the old school style of starting. And one of my athletes that's a breaststroker favors that grab start right now, and it's pretty fun to watch. It has a high margin of error because if your hamstrings are tight, you can kind of fall forward. But the grab start really gives a lot of power. And there's still some athletes you'll even see every once in a while in high level events that still do the grab start versus the more popular track start. Okay, last thing I'm going to close it out with today, and I got to go pick up Carter. When you don't sleep well, you get slower, less creative, and more stressed, and you underperform. If you don't know who Sean Stevenson is from the Model Health Show, you should. Okay, so go look up Sean Stevenson, Model Health Show. He was brilliant during COVID. He's been brilliant for a long time. And I like to tell this quick anecdote. My friend Jenna Phillips Ballard knew two different Sean Stevensons, and I confused them. And I had interacted with the other Sean Stevenson in person. I hope I'm getting all this correct, but this is what I remember in my mind. This is the story that I tell myself. And so I thought that it was the other Sean Stevenson that had a popular podcast, and I struggled to like connect with him and understand just again like our brains I don't think worked exactly the same, and I struggled to kind of understand him in person when we took class together. And so I did never look up his podcast, but then when I found the Sean Stevenson of the Model Health Show, I actually came back to him during COVID because I was listening to people telling me that, as a quote white person, I should listen to more black people. And I was like, okay, well, I could defend myself and say, like, I love Michael Bernard Beckwith, or, I grew up going to this Martin Luther King conference every Martin Luther King weekend, and I could ramble off more. Blacks or African Americans that I listen to, but okay, cool. I'll listen to some ones I haven't. And I was like, I'm going to listen to Sean Stevenson, and I'm going to listen to Candace Owens because I've never listened to them. And that's what I did during COVID. But you should know about Sean Stevenson. But look at how Carter behaves when he is sleep deprived. Sleep is not something that's really open for debate in our house. That's where I do not fall in the radical unschool camp. Carter goes to bed and he fights me on it. But look what happens when he's grumpy.
Need that. I need if people come up and want to play with me.
Oh, okay.
That's when I'll let him, but not like somebody just walks up and starts playing.
Okay.
Not what you can do.
Okay.
Don't video me.
Okay.
Turn that off now. Turn it off.
Off. Okay. I did eventually turn it off, and I had to, oh my gosh, I just had to laugh. He's tired, he's grumpy, he has his goggles on already, like he's not even in the water. He's got the goggles on, carrying the dump truck, like everything's great. But, we've got to sleep, right? I could have him just be sleep deprived and like some of the radical unschoolers, learn by letting him fail, but I'm not going to. He gets to sleep, which is why, he was doing this play. He was there late at night. We make choices, and that was a choice. He's there late at night, past his quote bedtime. And, I ordered him some gaming and nighttime glasses. And when he gets home, the diffuser's already going in his room, like he's ready to wind down. He's gonna have some he's gonna have some hemp oil. He like has a sleeping playlist that he used to use it sometimes when we were little and he was traveling and it was loud, or but now he'll just use it if he needs to like wind down a little bit. But I failed last night. Normally I turn that thing off, and take the it's whatever out of his room, but I didn't turn off the sleeping playlist. So, when we know better, we do better. I'm going to talk more about swimming and distance swimming and what is possible when we make choices, right? The choice to train, the choice to swim, and the choice to care more about the development of my son being healthy than maybe his little bit of protesting, right? I did respect his no. I respected his no. He told me to turn off the camera. And yeah, so, all right. I'll see you on the next one.